Welcome to this lecture. So in this lecture, I'm going to show you how different methods of activity lifecycle are executed in context to activity. So we are going to develop a demo application in this lecture. So let's start this lecture. So head back to your Android Studio. So you can see that I have already created an empty activity project inside the Android Studio. So by default, when you create an empty activity project inside Android Studio, you got two files. The first is activity main.xml and main activity.java file. But inside this project, you can see I have two more files, the activity second.xml file and second activity, because I have created a second activity in this project as well. So you can see that this is the main activity and this is our second activity with their corresponding activity main.xml file and activity second.xml file. So inside of activity main.xml file, by default we have a constraint level. You will get it when you create an empty activity project inside the Android Studio, inside of which I have placed a one linear layout, and inside of the linear layout I have placed a one button that has an ID of button 1 and a text as first button. So on click of this button I want to start a second activity. So inside of second activity, by default when you create a second activity you will get a constraint layout, and inside of constraint layout I have placed a text view of ID as text view s, and I have specified the text as second activity. So enough intro, let's start the coding of the application. So first switch back to main activity.java. So here you can see I have already created a button variable of first button, so we don't need second button, so I'm going to delete it. So we just only left with the first button, and I have initialized the ID of this button. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to set the listener to this first button. So there are many ways to set the listener to the button. I had showed you a couple of ways in previous lecture, so you can see it, but I'm going to use the direct approach by setting the first button listener directly to the button. So I'm going to type first button, pressing a tab, and set on click listener method by pressing a tab. Here I'm going to type new and then view on click listener and hit a tab key, then it will auto complete the code for us. Then inside of this on click method I'm going to start an intent. So type simply intent, as this one, hit enter key and create an object of the intent class. So intent is equal to new intent. Then inside of this intent we need to pass the context. So I'm going to type main activity dot this comma, then we need to pass the dot class file of the second activity. So I'm going to type second activity dot class and hit a semicolon, and then we need to start the intent by using method called start activity and pass the intent as an object. Now it's time to run the application to see whether we are successfully able to start the activity or not. So I'm going to click on run button, and here I'm going to run it into my virtual emulator. Simply hit OK. So when I click on this, so you can see that our application is up and running. So when I click on this first button, so you can see that we are now in the second activity. Now it's time to override all the other methods of the activity lifecycle. Right now we have only one method of the activity lifecycle, that is onCreate, and it is the best method to initialize all the variables, views, and the widgets declaration inside of this, because the initialization of this is the initialization of the view. If we are using a variable, then we also need to initialize variable inside the onCreate, because the onCreate executes only once and it will initialize all the resources. I have tell you in the previous lecture as well. So let's make a little space. So I'm going to type on start. So this is our on start method. Hit a tab key. So on start will be overridden. Then it's time to override the on resume method, which is the third method of the activity lifecycle. So here we can see on resume. So this is another method of on resume. Then after that we have a method called on stop. Then hit a tab key. Then another method that is on pause. Hit a tab key. Then there is another method of the activity lifecycle, which is on restart. That is the on restart method. So on destroy. So this is our on destroy method. So this is our three methods, then 3, and then this is our 7th method. So there are total 7 methods inside the activity lifecycle. So I'm going to use a log statement. So log dot, I'm going to use a I, and then here we need to specify the tag. So I'm going to type a tag. Then inside of this we need to try our message. So we are in a on create. So I'm going to type here is on create method. Then hit a semicolon at the end. Now I'm going to copy this tag. Now the log statement is basically used to debug the code. Means it will help you which method is executed or which method is not. So it will actually help the programmer lots of time. Instead of displaying the data directly to the UI component, you can first display the data in the LogCat, then you can move your further coding. Means if you are actually fetching data from the server or maybe an SQLite database, so instead of directly displaying into the view, because for displaying data into the view you need to typecast it, sometimes you need to pass the integer from string and string to integer, so it will take lots of time. So that's why we actually display the data first inside the LogCat by using log statements, then we can display the data to the other side, because log statement gives us the information that we are actually successfully able to get the data from the server. Then we can do our further execution. So that's detailed information that I want to share with this by pressing Ctrl V, and there I am going to rename it as on resume. Then again I am going to paste it here. So I'm going to quickly do that, then I will be continuing the video. Now you can see that the coding is done. I have placed the log statement inside of all the methods of the activity lifecycle, that is on destroy, restart, on pause, and so on. So what I'm going to do, and now I'm going to run the application. Also I'm going to expand the LogCat. So first I'm going to expand the LogCat, and from there I'm going to select the info, because I have used a log.i, and here I'm going to type a tag, which is a capital tag that I have specified here. Then I'm going to run the application inside the virtual emulator. So you can see that our application is up and running. Also you can see that inside the LogCat all the three methods are executed. The first is on create, on start, on resume, and the activity is completely visible to the user as well, means we can interact with the activity. So right now if I click on this button, so you can see that on pause is called. Now the first activity is actually in the on stop state. Then again if I click on the back button, so you can see that the on restart, then on start, and on resume is executed. When I click on this back button, so then again on pause is called, then on stop, and then on destroy, and the first activity is destroyed. To clear it more briefly, I'm going to add one more thing. Means right now we are only getting the name of the methods. To get more detailed look about the activity, I'm going to define a public static tag at the top of the onCreate. Then I'm going to use that tag inside the LogCat statement, then it will be very clear to you. So I'm going to do it quickly. So here I'm going to define a tag. So I'm going to type public static final, and I'm going to type string. I'm going to define a tag variable name as tag. Then here I'm going to type main activity dot class get simple name, and hit a semicolon. Similarly, I'm going to define the same tag inside the second activity as well, but with the name of second activity dot class. Now it's time to use this tag in all the log statements. I'm going to quickly replace the tag with this tag name. So you can see that I have done with the coding. I have replaced the tag with this actual tag variable that I have declared at public final string tag variable. Now it will gives us a more detailed look of the activity, means which method is executed in context of the which activity. So again I'm going to run this application into my virtual emulator. So you can see that our application is up and running. Also you need to type this main as a text inside this box so that you can filter the large amount of data. Means you need a data that is related to the main activity, because if you delete this, you get lots of other types of information as well. Also you're getting this information, but along with this information you are getting bunch of other information as well. To filter those data, you need to type here main, or you can type the full main activity as well, but for the main it will does the thing for us. So you can see that the application is running. Also the method on create, on start, and on resume executed, and the activity is completely visible to the user, means now I can interact with this activity. So if I click on this first button, so you can see that the main activity is now in the on pause state, means on pause executed, then on stop. Right now the second activity is in front. So if I click on this back button, so you can see that the activity is restarted, means the main activity is again restarted, then on start is execute, then on resume. So from there you can see that the on create is not executed again. So if I click on this back button, so now our activity is destroyed by calling on pause, then on stop executed, then on destroy. So this is how our main activity is actually created and destroyed. When we switch from main activity to second activity, then it is actually goes into the pause state, then goes into the stop state, and then when again it is restarted by calling the on restart method, then it will be again on start is good and then on resume. Then we are able to again interact with the activity, and then after that when I click on the back button, the activity goes destroyed by calling on pause, on stop and on destroy. So this concludes the lecture how activity lifecycle methods are executed in context of two activities. So that's all about this lecture. Thanks for watching and I will see you in the next lecture. Thank you.